to promote public safety. But Louisville Metro and the LMPD fail to ensure that all employees uphold the federal constitutional and statutory rights of people in Louisville. For years, LMPD has practiced an aggressive style of policing that it deploys selectively, especially against Black people, but also against vulnerable people throughout the city. LMPD cites people for minor offenses like wide turns and broken taillights, while serious crimes like sexual assault and homicide go unsolved. Some officers demonstrate disrespect for the people they are sworn to protect. Some officers have videotaped themselves throwing drinks at pedestrians from their cars, insulted people with disabilities, and called Black people monkeys, animal, and boy. This conduct erodes the community trust, and the unlawful practices of LMPD and Louisville Metro undermine public safety. Failures of leadership and accountability have allowed unlawful conduct to continue unchecked. Even when city and police leaders announce solutions, they fail to follow through. In LMPD, officer misconduct too is too often goes unnoticed and unaddressed. At times, LMPD leaders have endorsed and defended unlawful conduct. A street enforcement unit that violated LMPD policy and federal law has been repeatedly rebranded but never disbanded. First line supervisors regularly fail to monitor their officers and recognize misconduct when it occurs. And we, as Metro Council, just recently passed a contract that allows them to make things disappear and really not address some of the conduct issues. And more senior leaders fail to demand better. Supervisors routinely overlook or even defend obviously excessive force, search warrants clearly lacking probable cause, unjustified no knock entries, failures to document traffic stops in Black neighborhoods, and unnecessarily harsh treatment of people with disabilities. And recently, we've even seen where body cam body cameras that we fought so hard to have aren't being used the way that we were promised they would be used. From both the DOJ report and the University of Louisville's History of Policing report, these harms inflicted by LMPD are broad and far reaching. The uprisings in 2020 were an inflection point. That wasn't the beginning. It's always been happening. There's a lot of people whose stories we would never hear. And so this is to address all of that. This week makes 4 years since the start of the 2020 uprising, where I was called to be present. Some people think that I'm using Breonna Taylor for this platform. No, I was asked to show up to support our young people, to support not just young people, but seasoned people who were tired, sick and tired of the abuse that they witnessed. I have been working for social justice and equity in this city for decades. It didn't just start in 2020. And and I was called to use my expertise during this time. I was literally picking my brother up from prison in Ohio when I got the call to come and support. I get it that some think it is past time to move on and they figure how can we as a whole move on, but there has not been enough accountability. I'm not saying nothing has been done, but not enough has been done. I was told that the mayor and chief have apologized on different occasions, like the Clout Nehemiah conference and a press conference here and there. While we certainly appreciate the mayor's comments, I think it is important for the full Metro government as an institution to have a formal acknowledgement of the harms of our police department on record. That's what this resolution is about. It's not formally in our record books, it's not on record. The legislation we have filed closely mirrors the People's Consent Decree. None of the things that are in the proposed legislation are things that Shameka made up or my friends made up. This comes from hundreds and thousands of people who've signed petitions, who've given their opinion, who've participated in the DOJ process and other investigations. These are their words. Our goal is to honor the many community voices that gave their time, their expertise to create this document. My goal is to always bring more voices into the legislative and governmental process. That's why the people hired me. to bring those voices here, especially those voices that are regularly and purposely shut out. I was consulted about the last press conference I had. This is only my second press conference as a Metro Councilwoman. And I was told that they got many complaints because, one, there was a banner under the Metro seal that said "End Police Violence." We were there. It was March 13, 2020, when Brianna's life was taken. It was police violence. If it was any other gun violence in any other community, we would be talking about it just the same. But this was about the violence that happened. And then and I know what happened. The biggest picture that came out of that day was all these black men on this stage right here with their fists in the air. No, none of them condemned the police. None of them said anything wrong. They spoke very well about the issues and the problems at hand. None of them have ever been welcomed in this space the way they were on March 13, 2024. And I did that because I want to represent the people. I'm not trying to irritate my colleagues. I really want to make sure that voices are heard. And that is my job as a Metro Council person. And lastly, it was commented because people complained, and it was a commented that is she an activist or a council person? And I said I'm both. I have to hold all the truths and all the people that I have to be in my community. And I'm not running from any of it because what I had to be for our community is what I will continue to be moving forward unapologetically. The legislation for me is how I see protest to policy change. I sought public office because now I know I can serve the communities in both an activist and legislative role. I have always advocated for better policy, and now I am a policy maker. I am proud the People's Consent Decree resolution is the first piece of legislation I have filed without a co sponsor. But my goal is to have many co sponsors, not just the 14 I need to push this through, but all of our council people should sign up and be a part of this, just as they advocate for the budget and the contracts. My call to action is for every one of my Louisville Metro colleagues to support this effort as it moves through the processes. The call to action today is for everyone to ask their council member to support this resolution. Our goal is not to impunge police officers, but to finally have a full Metro government acknowledgement of the harms inflicted by LMPD on our community and recognize the many ways we can act to imagine public safety that works for everyone, not just the rich, not just the celebrities, but everyone. We want our Louisville mayor and police chief and every Louisville police officer to embrace and support this attempt to publicly right some wrong and be on the right side of history. This is a part of our legacy in Louisville, Kentucky. We are taught that no one is above the law. When those who are sworn to protect and serve violate human rights, break laws, and commit violence without being held accountable, it sends the wrong message and it promotes violence. So everyone says we want our city to be more safer, and we believe in public safety. Well, those who are in charge of enforcing the laws have to honor that as well. Additionally, this legislation is important for officers and first responders. As the DOJ report has shown, officers who challenge misconduct are also harmed and retaliated against. That's a very real thing. Finally, this legislation is simply the right thing to do. We see injustice. We must speak up and stop it at every turn. When my grandchildren are grown and reading history books, I want them to know that their grandmother did everything she could to stop injustice. My 10th point is to all of the officers, the people who work within Metro government who have been contacting me since before 2020, but since 2020 have been contacting me about the internal toxic issues that they deal with and how hard it is for them to use their voice and to step out without feeling like they're going to be retaliated against or lose their job. I thank you for being courageous to reach out to me through social media, through email, through phone, to tell me about the internal harms and struggles that you're dealing with. And I know that it's hard to fight from the inside, but we that are outside, and now I work for Metro government and inside, We'll make sure that we do what we can to lift your voice, to lift your stories. Many officers reach out to me when something happens. And so if the police thought that I hated them, they would not be as comfortable reaching out to tell me of the internal struggles and the decision making that makes it hard for them to step up and stand out and speak out about misconduct. I hear you. I protect your identity because I can't afford to employ all the people who choose to step out against their employer. I want to make sure that your voices and your concerns are lifted and heard during this process. I know that they paint me as anti-police, but I'm anti-corruption. I'm for human rights. I'm for the people. And you who have been reaching out, you understand that. I will continue to protect your identity through this process, and we will continue to build up such a force that you could stand up and speak on this misconduct and be supported. I know that you're working these jobs because that's what we do. We have employers. I'm blessed to have the work that I'm able to do and live all of my true selves. And it's hard for some of you to speak up. I ask you to keep doing it every way you can. Keep helping us be able to help you. Thank you. So I wanted to stick to those talking points so that I convey all of the messages that we've been receiving. I will not read the resolution, but I will. I mean, I could, but I don't. I don't want to read it. Um, it's important to know that we didn't make up these words, that this comes from the DOJ's recommendations, as well as the History of Policing report that was commissioned during the Truth and Transformation Project by U of L. So these are doctors. These are people who are professionals. These are lawyers. These are police officers. These are a bunch of people who are respected across our community for their expertise. They are the ones who put these words together. I also understand that some of my colleagues may have issues with some of the language being present or past tense. Like I said, we wanted to honor what was presented to us, and I'm willing to make changes that don't take away from the meaning and the point of this. Everything else has been watered down. We cannot water down the people's voices and the people's words through this process. But if there are some grammatical errors, but I'm not perfect, if there are some other issues like that, we can handle that and deal with that. But don't let that be an excuse for you not to support what the people are asking for you to support. So I will take any questions if there's any.
Councilwoman, so take a step by step now what happens from here. If we filed the resolution correct, has it been introduced yet, or where does it go from?
It hasn't been introduced yet. There is a process, and I have my experts here who've been doing it longer than me. But it hasn't. It will be assigned to a committee so that it can be heard. I think the first time it should be heard would be our next council meeting, and it would go. I'm imagining it might be signed to public safety, but it could go equity. I don't know which committee it's going to, and then in that committee process, it will be heard and read, and then folks will get to move it out of committee. I'm hoping that they do. It's going to take some work. I'm working on the front end and the back end to talk to different colleagues to get them to support. I've sent out messages. I sent out messages and even copied the mayor, the mayor's office, police chief, and all of them. I think the police need to embrace this as well. And because this is a answer to things that have happened. This is a response, I mean, to the things that have happened. But so after that process, it comes out of committee, then it'll be moved to the business to be able to be voted on by the larger body. And we need at least 14 votes to move it beyond that. So we need to get it out of committee and then to get it through the council. And after that process, it will go to our mayor, which through the truth and transformation process should be willing to do this as they committed to answer the community, to have these community meetings, and to do all the things that they're supposed to do. This is not anti-police, it's accountability that is documented in our books.
Have you had conversations with the department and the mayor's office as we work to file this?
Many conversations, and I'm imagining they knew this was coming because we've talked about it. But when we filed it with the county attorney's office to go back and forth with the language, yes, they know about it. But I now will continue to have those conversations to get their support. But right now, The burden of this is on my colleagues, the Louisville Metro Council members. The mayor's job is not to be a dictator and run our city, it's to manage our city and what the legislative body determines. So I'm hoping the political will be there for the legislative body to follow through, and the mayor should support it.
Councilwoman, with regard to the history of policing report, there was recent reporting by the Career Journal that Mayor Greenberg was sitting on that report. There was a lot of tussle internally. I'm wondering, keeping that in mind, how receptive this could be from the mayor's office, because I know there's also a piece in the resolution that says process of amends, including monetary compensation, should be provided to victims of rape abuse. So this is a very comprehensive resolution. So I'm wondering how you think that could be taken by the mayor's office team, how it's been, history of policing report has been treated.
I appreciate that question. I know that it's indeed an uphill battle, but this was a commitment made. I know the mayor came in after Mayor Fisher had made the decision to do the Truth and Transformation, but he still came in and said that he would participate. There's been money in our budget allotted to this process, and so this should be seen as another step along the road to recovery and building better police relationships, and especially as things continue to happen, I think the mayor should definitely be able to support this and back it up, because if I've heard that the decision to hold it through U of L was a courtesy call through former Deputy Mayor Barbara Sexton Smith, but now we have Deputy Mayor David James, who is a former police officer, head of the police union, FOP, and so he knows the ins and outs of this. And so I think that we should be all be able to come to the table, and they should fully support this. I think it sends the strongest message to the community if they do. But if I don't get him to do it, I know the community, the supporters of him and his administration should be able to do this. Both business, both developers, all of these folks should be on board with formally doing this in this way to have it formally documented. He said to me in our last meeting, I apologize at the Nehemiah conference. I said, that's fine. That's clout. And I'm glad that clout held him accountable for that. But what about the rest of the community who hasn't seen any level of accountability that makes them feel like changes will be made? We got to document it. I've seen resolutions for things that are not as serious as this get the full support. So I'm hoping that my colleagues will support this, and the mayor has no other way but to support this with his administration, and as well as the police chief. I mean, I know she is under his leadership, but when I had conversations with her, she said that she supports constitutional policing and she's trying to get the police force together. Well, this is another way to do this. We cannot look at it as a slap in the face. This is after a serious contract was approved, after I voted against some of the budgetary, because that was the only way to address them directly and where they're actually listening to us. So they're getting their money, they're getting the raises, they're getting another wellness center, they're getting their new headquarters, they're getting new cars, they're getting new uniforms, they're getting all of that. The next thing is this resolution is for the people, because none of us benefit from those other things that they're getting. If the policing isn't fair and equitable and people aren't treated right, I don't care that you got a new shiny uniform. I want to see your commitment to moving us forward, and I want you paid well in the process.
The recent Scheffler incident, how do you feel that that was handled, and does it highlight issues that need to be addressed within the
As someone that's been in jail twice here in Louisville and got arrested on bogus charges during the protest, and it took 13 hours for us to get through that. I know that some favors were called. I helped get judges elected. I understand judicial conduct, judicial processes, and I worked for the Bail Project. And I would sit out there outside of the jail exit lobby when somebody just finishes court, and it takes 6 to 9 to 12 hours for them to be released. That's not equity. That's not fairness. And like I said, and I talked to a Courier Journal reporter, I want the best outcome for anybody going through the judicial process. So I definitely want it for Mr. Shefflin. But was he treated differently because of his status? It's obvious that it was. I've never seen anybody get out of that jail, and I worked there every day. They used to say that I was, there. What is that thing where you tailgate? They said I was jailgating because I would sit out there in a chair and wait for people to be released, and nobody has ever been released in 72 minutes that I know about. So I know that from work, active work around there, but also everybody should be, and being released after you're accused of committing violence against a police officer, because dragging is violent, and it can be seen as violent if that's what happened. And then the fact that that happened in that way, that just shows. That's why we need this. That's why our colleagues need to be supporting this, because you can't hold, oh, we want them paid well, but we don't want them held accountable. What does that tell to young people, that you're saying the young people are violent, but if they see the people in charge of dealing with violence being violent, ignoring rules, ignoring procedures, pulling up, and their gun changes the whole scenery. It tells them, if I have gun, I have a power. If I have power, I have control. They are a part of the violence we see, and nobody really wants to accept that. And if we are going to really end violence, we have to start with our own, and we have to make sure that our own are held to that level. And so I think that the mayor, who says he wants this, who wants this beautiful city to move on and be better, you cannot have that if you don't hold those folks accountable. I need the political will to be there, and not to be moving out of fear. LMPD is an arm of our government. They should not be running our city. And anybody who thinks that it's only their leadership that matter is sadly mistaken at the almost a million people that live in this city and county who deserve to be treated fairly and treated just like Mr. Shefflin was. Because when I was in there, I mean, we didn't even get our bologna sandwich in 72 minutes. We didn't even get that in 72 minutes. And so just to see, and I was locked up with former state representative Attica Scott, and she was a state representative. They put her in a separate cell, but she didn't get released. So I think that we have to respect that too many injustices are happening, even in the practices, and using the judicial part of that is not right. It's not right to do that. And I saw that former Judge Chavan spoke up for Judge Nicholson, who released him. Who was responsible for his release? He spoke up and said that this happens, where everyone should be given that same consideration. There's people who died in holding cells, in phone booths, the places where they would see their lawyers being held more than 72 minutes. So I think that it sends a record. And again, what we're telling the country is that our Louisville Metro Police Department operates under favors and corruption, and continues to guide our city down a very bad path. We have to rectify that. And this resolution is an attempt to do that. It has to be actions. Our words have to match our actions to build the consistency, the trust that everyone says they want.
How does this resolution, if passed, accomplish your goal of accountability and trust? Given that resolutions are typically ceremonial.
Yes, they're typically ceremonial, but as she spoke about, there's some specific details in here that comes from the recommendations from a DOJ report everybody accepts, from a people's consent decree that people are saying. So yes, let's make it in a language that's digestible for the people of council of what we can do, but it gives us a reference point and a tool to come back to, and gives us as elected leaders something to continue to build off of. This is my first piece of legislation that I've introduced by myself. I will continue to follow up on every part of this resolution, on the things that we can do and make ordinances. The problem is the political will has to be there. And if we're going to force the political will, it's going to take the people power to build that. This gives the people the ammunition they need to start to push our elected leaders to follow suit. So if we do this, it's a first step into to a long path of recovery, of building the police that we need and support, and being able to be accountable for what the decisions that were made before. This is still being done on our dime. That we are paying for this over and over again. Millions and millions of dollars have been paid out for the wrongs of our police department, and what's happening in our jails. And yet we got the firemen's budget, their contract is being held up, and they don't do that, right? They don't have the same amount of lawsuits and issues, and we're holding them up on percentages of wages and things like that. We didn't do that with the police. We have to treat all of our essential emergency services and servants of Louisville Metro government the same. This is just trying to level the playing field and make sure that there's a record for us to keep moving from and keep going back to as we move forward. So I do think it is a resolution, but as you've seen with the ceasefire resolution, they fought and stopped that. That's still there. I still want to get that passed, right? And because what it means to the people. And we didn't, Councilman Arthur and I didn't pull that legislation because it making it through committee meant a lot to the Palestinian people. And I feel the same. I'm going to stick with this. I know it's an uphill battle. I'm going to try to push it through. I'll meet all of my colleagues where I can, but I'm leading off the people's word and what they hired me to do. So I'm committed to see this through throughout my term and what's next. Everybody knows that most people are working on their next election. I'm working on what the people voice and what the people need right now.
Woo! I was talking to the former director of the NAACP, um, but she she was saying that the consent decree is only as good as the monitoring team. So what are just some updates on what has been going on with that?
I am a part of the Public Safety Committee, and I haven't talked to my chair on any of those specific updates, but we will need someone to help lead that monitoring process. So I suggest if you want that to be you or somebody from the community, we start sending suggestions to our inspector general so that they can start considering they're going to build a team to do that, and our budget has allotted money for that team. But we need it to be a real community representative. It should not be a police officer. It should not be a former police officer for many reasons. We have former police officers that are in our state house still acting like police officers. So that transition is hard for them, and I get it. They've been living a certain way. But for this, we need a real community voice. So in that process, they're trying to build a team. I suggest anyone interested in being an applicant, and it should be advocates applying for this, apply for that process to be a part of that monitoring, to give the people the voice, the updates, and making sure that real concerns are addressed. So yeah, money's been allotted. They're starting to build that process and see what it looks like. But this DOJ process can take months to years. So this resolution is a further step in our commitment to do what's right. The DOJ consent decree won't be everything we need. We need to seal this in at this level, and then when they come in and they do their negotiations, which we're not a part of, but there'll be a period where we can say that works, that makes sense. We could tie it back to the resolution. That's why we need this in place so that it gives us another place to move from and pivot from. But no, I'm going to monitor that whole process, and I can't work another job, so it definitely won't be me applying. But I will encourage people that are advocates to apply for those positions when they come available. I don't think it needs to be someone from outside of Louisville. I think it needs to. We have what we need right here, and it needs to be one of our own. Some cities have police chiefs that are not even from police, but we are a long way from there. But with this could be a start of us reimagining what policing should be for our community. So thank you for bringing that up. I ask people to really pay attention to the public safety meetings. Those are the people and the people who are on those committees, asking them those questions so that we can challenge this while we're in those committees and kind of and get the best answer and response. But right now, our level is we approved that part of the budget. We stay monitor the hiring process for that person. And if we could be at the table as those decisions are being made, I would definitely want to do that.
Councilwoman, this is a pretty far-out question.
Mhm.
It depends on who wins the presidential election.
Oh, jeez.
We have, usually we've seen the Democratic Party led administration, take consent decrees seriously. The Obama administration had about 14 consent decrees come out. The Trump administration curbed consent decrees because they thought that that reduced morale and that you could solve violent crime from that. And so depending on who becomes president, a lot of things could shift. And so I'm wondering, my question is, how committed can you stay to all of these reforms regardless of what happens to the consent decree? Because I'm understanding that we need this regardless of what happens, all of these reforms. So just curious about how committed you like to stay to that, even if the consent decree happens or, something changes.
Well, I ain't going nowhere. I'll be in this role for a very long time, and even if I'm not a council person, I will make sure to continue to advocate. I will say a big thank you to the Breonna Taylor family and for them advocating for reforms in their process for civil, response. And so they didn't just say, "Give me money." They said, "Please make sure that you work on these things," and they put it in there. So that gives us a tool to follow up on. We need our judges and our judicial response to match what the people are asking for as much as possible. So we do have some way to address that through what's already been accepted through the process that the Breonna Taylor family went through and other people who've asked for those reforms. The resolution gives us that springboard to continue to look for that. The DOJ consent decree process gives us another avenue to do that. No matter who's president, people see Kentucky as a red state and they count us out. As I travel around this nation, I talk about the fight of the people that's always been there, from coal miners to civil rights. We are a strong people power. We've been building and fighting. These people that you see in the audience are not going to let up. We're not going to give this up, and we're going to continue this work in all of our roles. And so they're going to think that they're getting away with it if they don't address it, but we're going to make sure to bring that back again and again. And it's important for us to elect people who will answer the call of the people as well. So I plan to be on every side of that, from getting better candidates elected to making sure that our Democratic Party does its job, even though I'm treated as a stepchild. And then also making sure that we move together as a state, because these police issues, I've been reached out to people from Whitesburg, Pikeville, Paducah. These are not just happening in Louisville. Louisville can actually be a guiding star with this resolution and the follow up and the accountability that we're pushing for, that we would hope will reverberate throughout the whole state. That is our goal. We have to it's not just about Louisville, but this part of it is in our hands to handle and take care of. And so what we said 4 years ago is enough is enough. We're not taking it anymore, but that wasn't our first time doing that. I think that we are moving the needle, but what we need is more political will to do the same. And I will be at the doors, helping to motivate candidates to run, helping to hold people accountable in no matter what role I hold, whether it's council person or through an organization. And you have a bunch of organizations in here who've been in this fight for more than 20 years trying to get police accountability, that got the, even before merger, that got the a civilian review board passed, but then they let that sunset and had to come back and 20 years later to work on that. And we need to get them the resources and the teeth they need to hold. So we got to fight this. I've been telling people that this period is a both and. We have to do the local right upfront stuff, and we have to do the long-term planning and strategy to make sure we seal in what we've been fighting for. It's the real protest to policy change. Good, y'all let me off. Yes. Thank you. Thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for coming.
No, Councilwoman.
Yeah, so, just so you know, we will be sending out.
The lights of Kentucky Performing Arts shine on more than our shows. They illuminate a pathway of discovery for all throughout our Commonwealth. A pathway of creativity, confidence, possibility, of brilliance, inspiration, curiosity, and wonder. For 40 years, Kentucky Performing Arts has led a pathway to unite the Commonwealth around the joy of discovering the arts, and will continue to shine this light far into the future.
Si no haces nada más,
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 mantente vivo.